3, 2, and 1. Okay, welcome to the LCACC meeting. We are going to begin, but I see a hand raised. So I'm going to go to the audience first and ask Victoria to speak.
Whenever you take public comment, Debbie as chair, if you could come to me, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. We are starting the agenda with public comment. A few people have jumped in and said the meeting shouldn't take too long, and you're right, it shouldn't. There are no public comments listed on the actual link that was on the agenda, so I can just go directly to Victoria.
Okay, great. I just had a couple things that I would like the committee to consider. One, we did vote, if you recall, in September to start our meetings at 6:30, and we know that these have been crazy times, but it has been really problematic, just speaking for myself and speaking for the couple people I've been in contact with that haven't been able to make it. And in particular, we have one community member who we actually was part of the discussion that has been systematically excluded because he could never make it. And especially when we look at times with quorum being important, I just want us to be able to reflect and honor those sort of the community that we build in this committee moving forward. And then secondly, I know that district staff will hopefully be looking at accepting more applications. I do know of at least a couple people who have submitted applications for LCAP going back now 3 months. And at that time, we only had a couple regularly scheduled meetings left, but and if that was part of the reason for not seating people, we've now had 4 meetings, and I think it behooves us to look into that because we have not had the Washington attendance area represented at all this year, at least by the rosters that I have. So just some things, because everyone is doing so great, and we've really become a much more highly functioning committee with Debbie chairing this year and getting more things in place. And I think we can do even better with our representation next year. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that, Victoria. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand now, so I don't think that you have more to say on this particular topic. I'm going to go ahead and go straight into the agenda, and we have only one topic, which is the budget for the 2021 LCAP. I sent you out the link or the actual document that I worked on with business. And what I did between Christy Rocha, myself, and David Wilson, who is our business technician for LCAP, we went through and looked at all of the notes and recommendations made by LCAP. We also, this year, because of COVID and because of the hit that we've taken to our budget, and with the governor's, even with the governor's revise, we had to cut a total of $1.4 million from our LCAP budget. So what we wanted to do before we looked at having to make any services that the committee has been reviewing and talking about and analyzing over the course of the year, we had a couple of years where monies were dropping to the bottom line. And so I was very clear in our conversations that we wanted to get our numbers as tight as possible. We wanted our allocations to be as tight as possible so that moving forward, we didn't have monies dropping to the bottom line, in addition to cutting services that the committee felt was so valuable to our students. So I'm hoping that you'll find equal excitement in that we did not have to cut any services. And I wanted to go through the document with you so that you could see. And so I'll share my screen, but because when I share my screen, it takes up too much of my screen, I'm wondering, Brian, would you mind being the moderator and looking for hands raised and any comments coming in. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I can do that.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I miss my double monitor so much when it comes to stuff like this. Okay, so.
We do have a hand from Michael Gardner.
Okay, Michael?
When was the one, just a quick clarifying questions. When was the 1.4 million cut? And is it reflected in this document that we have? Is it different from what we've seen before?
No, it is reflected in this document. So let me take you through this. It's been since the May revise.
And it just the May revise, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what we have here, it's a familiar sheet to you. It's all of our goals and actions listed on the left side. And then the first column that denotes allocations are the 2021 allocations. But for comparison, we added the 1920 allocations in the next column, so you could see where the differences were. And in the last column, it's notes. It's more notes for staff, but certainly can help us look at anything that you have questions regarding. So in goal 1, in terms of all the actions, we see the numbers here and they're not chronological. And the only reason is because we've eliminated some of the items that were in action or goal 1, most notably 1.6, which was the PLC, and 1.4, which was technology. That was part of the original 3-year document. So we've eliminated, I'm sorry, 1.4. So we've eliminated those, and then you'll see over here where the grayed out boxes are, those are non-supplemental funds. So we didn't want those messing up our bottom line. So we left those out because they're not the purview of this particular committee. So what we said we wanted, the biggest changes we said we wanted in the new allocations for 2021, you'll note with 1.9, which is the Kennedy High School block schedule, we are earmarking $290,000, which we also did with this year's surplus monies. So we have that in both line items. The reason it's not here for the 1920 allocation is because those monies were all moved to 2.5, which is my cost center, so that when budgets came to pass, I would have the authority to put the budget code next to it so that it would go through the business allocations. So I just wanted to, if you guys remember this sheet, we put it all in G2A5. So that's why I didn't include it in the 1920 allocation under this particular item, because it would have messed up our totals. We also have, not as a goal and action, but just as contingency funds for distance learning. That was another thing that the LCACC committee said they wanted to make sure that we had. We don't know what the true impact of COVID-19 is going to weigh on the district financially, but we also know that we don't have a clear picture of what the fall is going to look like. So we wanted to put a contingency fund for distance learning there. If we want to move it to a different goal and action later, that's fine, but I just wanted to be transparent with what was left there. In establishing district-wide systems that delivers information about students' growth, we were able to realize some cost savings there because our assessment and accountability director usually has a cadre of folks go to a conference for Illuminate. We cut that travel and that conference funding out. Going down to goal 2.6, hands-on inquiry-based learning. That was placed in the LCAP at the beginning. We actually received a grant to make sure that as each middle school converts, or as each junior high converts to a middle school, we've set aside $10,000 from that grant to earmark towards Makerspace and Innovation Labs funding. So we didn't need to take it out of LCAP. It was money that for 2 years had dropped to the bottom line. And so we costed out at 0 for this coming year.
We do have a hand up, Debbie, Victoria Burbick.
Okay.
Sorry, Debbie.
That's okay.
Could you explain again, going back up to, so 1.9 was, and I see the asterisks right below that. Is it showing 0 for the 1920 allocation because it was done afterwards, or am I missing where that would get represented on here?
Are you talking about for the Kennedy block schedule, Victoria, or for
Right.
the
I thought we had voted to, because as you had noted, the money's dropping down. We did actually put that in the 1920, but is this only showing the things that were originally adopted?
Yes, originally adopted.
Thanks so much.
Every piece of funding that dropped to the bottom line, we consolidated into my cost center. So we couldn't show it twice. So good question. Okay, going down the line to, I'm just talking about major cost savings here. 3.1 Avid, we eliminated. So that was a cost savings of $357,000. And then for 3.2, establishing systems, including a range of academic behaviors and SEL interventions, we had, yeah, we had realized savings there because there were allocations built into the 1920 funding for positions, and they were not filled, and so that was money dropping to the bottom line, and we didn't think that they were going to be filled, and so we were able to get that a lot tighter. Increased achievement for cohort. Okay, so this is where Victoria had made a good point. 3.3. Is that right? Summer school, yeah. So this year we had 698,794, and we said moving forward, we're only going to need about half of that for credit recovery. Victoria had talked about at our last meeting, leaving that amount whole for the following year because we could look at interventions throughout the school day. So this is where that some of the money was realized in the contingency for distance learning. With the cut of 1.4 million that we needed to make, we couldn't do the contingency for distance learning and keep summer school / in-school interventions whole. And so we can move that money back out of contingency funding for distance learning into summer school for interventions, or we can leave it as is and see what the fall holds when you all come back together to see if you want to move the money at that point. Okay, so that might be another question that we discuss a little bit later on. 3.4, advise staff with truancy patterns. This, we had 2 child welfare and attendance folks earmarked into this particular funding allocation. 25% of one of the CWAs, and then one additional CWA that we wanted to add is what we allocated, because we have been told by the city that we're receiving 75% of funding for the second FTE. So we only had to earmark 1.25 FTE for this particular goal in action. And that's where that cost is. We had talked about the high needs schools, 3.6. We had originally earmarked 1.265 last year. We had talked about how one of those schools, that their demographics have changed considerably. They have moved down in their UDP numbers. And so they fell off of the high needs, which were originally the Title I elementary schools. They fell off of that criteria. And we also deducted their budgets by 20%, which is something that all other funding sources to schools had been in place for this year. So they got a year's cushion in which to absorb those cost cuts. And so we had quite a bit of savings there as well. 3.8, enable ELs to meet or exceed graduation requirements by maintaining ELD positions. This is under Dr. Rocha's cost center. She was able to narrow down that funding by half. And so we were able to tighten up those allocations and realize the cost savings there. 3.10, we were right on. This particular expenditure was done at the last minute, and it absorbed half of the PLC money that we had earmarked in Goal and Action 1 from the year before when we decided to eliminate the PLC stipends. So this pays for 4 program specialists and 28% of our school psychologists. We had a slight cost savings that we realized in 4.1. Again, it was over allocated for staffing and for case management, for some overtime for counselors, which we're not doing. We're tightening that up. And so we looked at that and said we can tighten it up by about little under $100,000. The rest of the allocations are pretty much spot on. We had a slight increase to our counseling positions in 4.6. We went from we had a cost savings from 3.5 to 3.2. So you can see the bottom line, our new LCACC criteria, which is calculated by a calculator from CASBO, is $14,589,224, which is down from $16,059,349. And you can see the delta there of $1.4 million that we had to reduce by. So at this point, what I want you to realize is we took in all the notes from the LCAP discussions, all of the ideas that LCAP had and found relevant. We discussed specific items from last year's or this year's LCAP quite extensively over the course of a couple different meetings. And then we looked at the expenditures and monies that had been dropping to the bottom line pretty consistently over the course of 2 years, worked with the business department to really tighten up the allocations, and this is where we're at. So at this point, Brian, if you want to let me know if there's any questions.
Yes, Anna has a question about 4.1, Anna?
I just wanted a little bit further explanation of everything that is under 4.1, because it's kind of a big chunk of change. It just, some of it doesn't make sense to me, or I'm not fully understanding it. Can you go through the list again of what that pays for? Thank you.
Is Dr. Rocha on the line? Is she in the meeting yet?
I am.
Oh, yay. Dr. Rocha. She worked pretty extensively with Director Bailey as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about all of the actions and items that are covered under 4.1?
Yes. So 4.1 consists of taking 28% of student support services salaries that the staff who work with foster youth, homeless youth, and do different enrollment and other activities with our families. So that consists of the big bulk of that money, and it also includes some professional development on, if needed, for any type of restorative practices or any consistency of training of that. But I would say the majority of the funding is for the staffing purposes. So it's like 3.10.
Does that answer your question, Anna?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Brian?
Ivy Wu?
Hi there. I remember hearing Marcus Battle saying that the budget is going to look differently. So I don't know how is that going to impact the numbers that we're working on right now.
Well, great question. As I stated before, the $14.5 million is what our supplemental funds are for the 2021 school year. So it looks very different than previous LCAPs. And so this year's delta was the 1.4 million that we had to reduce by. So it won't go lower than the 14.5. Does anybody have wood to knock on?
I was gonna say, do you really want to state that?
is what we're hoping. If anything, because of all of the comments and pressure politically that the governor's office is experiencing right now, it looks like the general fund could get a slight bump, but I haven't heard of how that might impact UDPs.
Okay, thank you.
This is where we're at. This is what we have to budget off of.
Okay.
Victoria Burbeck Herrera.
Thanks, Brian. So I had a couple questions. One, could there be a timeline, Debbie, you mentioned in the fall that we might get an update? It wouldn't be something that would need to be many months in to actually have costs calculated like you did for us this year with money that dropping to the bottom line, but just money that we would know pretty much as soon as school starts, whether the situation even allows for some of the things that we've budgeted for, if there might be certain increases or certain decreases. So if that's something that you might be able to comment on. And then the other was regarding the asterisks for the contingency. I'm wondering if that's something that submitting an LCAP plan would allow for, just having a contingency of 300,000 instead of us kind of prioritizing where that money goes, which is what we've always done in the past. So I'm wondering from staff perspective what the benefit to that is, because I'm seeing that it's about the 300,000 that, as you recall, I had request stay in 3.3 since I thought that increasing learning opportunities would be the priority at this time. So just from that staff perspective.
Sure. So again, we are allowed a contingency. We've had to do that in the past for raises that we knew were going to hit the LCAP. And so we've done contingency line items before, so that's not a concern. The reason when I was writing this with IS directors that we wanted, and with the business department, the reason we wanted to have a contingency line specific to distance learning is because the LCAP committee had requested that. That was a need that came up from people on this committee. And I think that we're going to have to utilize as much flexibility as possible moving into the new school year with costs and associations that we don't even know are coming. And so that was the only reason. Certainly at the beginning of the school year, that I would suggest that the LCAP committee convene as soon as possible, maybe even late August when school resumes, to revisit this and see if there's any updated news.
Thank you, Debbie.
Sure.
There are no other hands, Debbie.
Okay. So these are next steps. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That's the first next step. Okay. So our next steps is that we're going to take a vote on this proposed budget. And then we're going to, I'm going to present to the Board of Education on the 24th this new budget allocation proposal, along with the 6 areas that we had to write to for the assurances for both the county and the State Department with the LCAP. It's so strange this year because for the first year ever, we are having to uncouple the budget from the actual LCAP document itself, but there is no LCAP document written for what's due in December. So it would make no sense for us to just do a whole bunch of work on a template that was no longer going to be relevant. And so I'll be presenting this to the Board of Education as long as we vote on recommending these allocations. And then LCACC will convene again in the summer. We will adjourn all summer long, recess all summer long. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to let you know that when you come back in the fall, I will not be in the district. I have taken a position in another district, and so I will be leaving Fremont, and the Assistant Superintendent of Instruction will be reaching out to you because you do have a 2-year term and some of you have a 3-year term. But all of the processes that we've put in place this year will just continue into the fall. Okay. All right. So with that, I need a motion to accept the budget for the 2021 allocations for LCAP.
Michael Gardner moves that we
Thank you,
adopt
Michael.
this budget.
Thank you, Michael. Do I have a second?
Anna Shipper seconds.
Thank you, Anna. Do you have that, Victoria? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hands, like physically. Okay. Very good, you guys. Thank you. It is only 6:01. I'm so proud of us. All right, you guys, have a fantastic summer, a wonderful future. I know that the LCAP in Fremont is in very good hands with all of you.
And this is our last meeting with you.
Yes.
Debbie, we wish you every good luck. We're gonna, it won't be the same without you.
Thank you for everything.
When is the
Thank
board
you,
gonna,
guys.
when is the board gonna make a decision?
Regarding my
Your position, right?
LCAP. The board will get the recommendation for LCAP on the 24th of June. So, and then I don't know anything about my position that I'm leaving.
You'll be there on the 24th, correct?
Yes, I'll be there on the 24th to present.
Okay, thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you, guys, and have
Thank you,
a
Debbie.
restful time if you get any time off. Bye-bye, you
And
guys.
Debbie, we have
Bye.
quorum now.
Yes, we have quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.